sir. The rain slammed against the cafe windows like it wanted inside, angry and relentless. Elena Harper stood near the entrance, one hand resting lightly on the curve of her belly hidden beneath her long coat, the other gripping a paper cup that had gone cold 10 minutes ago. She hadn't taken a single sip. She was waiting for someone she once loved enough to marry and now needed to face one last time. Marcus Red sat at the small corner table, legs crossed, scrolling his phone with that same lazy confidence he'd always worn like expensive cologne. He looked up when she approached, did a slow once-over, and his mouth curved into the smirk she used to find charming. "Elena," he drawled. "Been a while. You look different." His eyes dropped pointedly to her midsection, then flicked back up. "Damn, you got fat or something?" The words hit like cold water thrown in her face. A few people at nearby tables glanced over, then quickly looked away. Elena felt the heat climb her neck, but she didn't flinch. She'd rehearsed this moment too many times to let him see her crack. She set the cup down carefully. "I'm pregnant, Marcus," she said, voice steady. 7 months. His smirk flickered, just for a heartbeat, before he leaned back and laughed short, sharp, mean. "Wow, okay, congrats, I guess." He tilted his head. "So who's the lucky guy? Some poor sap who finally decided to play house with you?" Elena's fingers curled against the edge of the table. She felt the baby shift a small, firm nudge, like he was reminding her she wasn't alone in this anymore. She met Marcus's eyes. "His name is Damien Voss." The name landed between them like a live wire. Marcus blinked. Then he laughed again, this time, louder, forced, trying to cover the sudden tightness in his jaw. "Damien Voss? The Damien Voss? The guy who basically owns this city and probably has a private army?" "Yeah, sure, Elle. Pull the other one." She didn't smile. She reached into her bag, pulled out a single folded ultrasound printout, and slid it across the table. Marcus glanced down. The smirk died. The image showed a clear profile, tiny button nose, one small hand curled near the mouth. Below it, printed in crisp hospital font, "Voss, baby boy." Estimated due date circled in red ink. He stared at it, long enough that the silence turned uncomfortable. Then he pushed the photo back toward her like it might bite. "You're lying," he said, voice low. "I'm not." Elena kept her tone soft, almost gentle. "And he's going to find out tonight." Marcus's hand shot out and caught her wrist knot hard, but tight enough to stop her from turning away. "Elena, wait. If this is real, if it's actually his, you have no idea what you're walking into. Voss doesn't forgive. He doesn't do half measures. If you kept this from him all this time." She looked down at his fingers on her arm, then back into his face. "I didn't keep it from him because I was scared of what he'd do to me," she said quietly. "I kept it from him because I was, scared of what knowing would do to him." She eased her wrist free. "Goodbye, Marcus." The bell above the door chimed as she stepped back into the rain. Behind her, Marcus remained seated, staring at the ultrasound photo still lying on the table like a grenade with the pin pulled. Elena walked 3 blocks before the tears came not for Marcus, but for what came next. She was about to walk into the one place she'd sworn she'd never return to, and tell the most dangerous man she'd ever loved that he was going to be a father. And she had no idea whether he would hold her or break her all over again. The city lights smeared across her windshield as she drove toward the glass tower that dominated the skyline. Damien Voss's building, his kingdom, the place where she'd once felt untouchable until she realized even queens could be collateral in his world. Her heart thudded in rhythm with the wipers. Thump, 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 thump. She pressed her palm to her belly. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "We're going to be okay." She didn't know if she believed it, but she was out of time to pretend otherwise. The private elevator opened straight into the penthouse. Damien stood at the far wall of windows, hands in his pockets, staring down at the city like it owed him something. Black suit, black shirt, no tie. The same quiet power that had once made her feel safe now made her pulse race for entirely different reasons. He didn't turn when the doors closed behind her. "You're late," he, said, voice low and even. "I had to make a stop," Eleanor replied. Only then did he turn. His face was unreadable sharp angles, storm gray eyes, the faint scar along his left cheekbone that he never talked about. Those eyes had once looked at her like she was the only soft thing left in his world. Now they studied her, like she was a problem he hadn't decided how to solve. "You've been avoiding me for months," he said, "and now you show up without warning. Why?" Elena took a slow breath, tasting the air lever, cedar, him. "Because I'm done hiding." She unbuttoned her coat and let it fall open. Damien's gaze dropped to the unmistakable swell of her belly. For the first time since she'd known him, she saw something fracture in his expression. Shock, disbelief, then something raw, unguarded, almost painful. "Elena," his voice cracked on her name, barely audible. She stepped closer. "I'm 7 months pregnant, Damien." He still didn't move. Another step. "The baby is yours." The silence stretched so thin she thought it might shatter. Then Damien Voss, the man who never begged, never faltered, never showed weakness, did the last thing she expected. He crossed the room in 2 long strides, dropped to his knees in front of her, and pressed his forehead gently against the curve of her stomach. His shoulders trembled, not with rage, with something far more dangerous. Relief. Elena's fingers slid into his dark hair, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I, sir, was scared. I thought if you knew, you'd either lock me away to keep me safe or walk away because you thought we'd be better off without you." He lifted his head slowly, eyes shining. "I would have burned this city down looking for you," he said hoarsely. "I thought you left because you couldn't stand what I am. I thought I'd lost you for good." She cupped his face, thumbs brushing the damp tracks on his cheeks. "I never stopped loving you. I just didn't want our child to grow up in a war." Damien rose to his feet, hands settling on her waist, careful, reverent, like she might disappear if he held on too tight. "Then let me end the war," he said quietly. "For both of you." He kissed her forehead, her temple, her lips soft at first, then deeper, desperate, like a man finally allowed to breathe after months underwater. When they parted, foreheads pressed together, he whispered against her mouth, "Marry me, again. No contracts, no games. Just us, just this." Elena smiled through her tears. "Yes." But even as the word left her lips, she saw the shadow flicker behind his eyes. Because the world Damien ruled didn't forget easily. And someone out there had just discovered the one thing that could bring the most powerful man in the city to his knees. His family. The morning light spilled across the penthouse floor like spilled gold, soft and forgiving after the storm of the night before. Elena woke slowly, the sheets tangled around her legs, Damien's arm heavy and warm across her waist. For the first time in months, she didn't feel the weight of secrets pressing on her chest. She felt held. She turned her head. Damien was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. His hair was mussed, eyes softer than she'd seen them in years. "Morning," he murmured, voice rough from sleep. "Morning." She smiled, small and tentative. "You're staring, Doc, can't help it." His hand slid down to rest on the curve of her belly. "I keep thinking if I look away, this disappears." "It won't." She covered his hand with hers. "We're here." He leaned in and kissed her forehead, lingering there like he was breathing her in. Then he kissed the tip of her nose, her cheek, finally her mouth slow, careful, like he was relearning every inch of her. When he pulled back, he asked, "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months." She stretched a little. He was active most of the night, kicking like he's training for soccer. Damien's lips curved, already stubborn. "Takes after his mother." She laughed softly. "Or his father." They stayed like that for a while, tangled together, the city humming far below them. Eventually hunger won out. Damien insisted on making breakfast something simple, eggs and toast and fresh fruit he'd had delivered at dawn. He moved around the kitchen with quiet focus, sleeves rolled up, the scar on his forearm catching the light. Elena watched from the island stool, chin in hand. "You're good at this." "I, sir, had practice," he said without looking up. "Before everything got complicated." She didn't push. Some doors in his past were still locked, and she wasn't ready to turn every key yet. They ate on the terrace, the autumn air crisp. Damien kept stealing glances at her belly, like he couldn't quite believe it was real. "I have a doctor's appointment this afternoon," she said between bites of strawberry. "Just a checkup. Nothing big." He set his fork down. "What time?" 2. "I'm coming." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure? It's just measuring, listening to the heartbeat. Nothing dramatic. I want to hear it." His voice was quiet but firm. "I've missed enough." Eleanor reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Okay, you're coming." The obstetrician's office was on the 20th floor of a sleek medical building, private, discreet, the kind of place that catered to people who valued silence as much as medicine. Damien sat beside her in the waiting room, knee bouncing slightly, the only sign he was nervous. When the nurse called Elena's name, he stood with her, hand at the small of her back. The doctor, Dr. Patel, was a calm woman in her 50s with kind eyes. She smiled when she saw Damien. "First prenatal visit with Dad?" "Something like that," Damien said, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. Elena lay back on the exam table. The gel was cold. Then the wand moved, and the room filled with the rapid, fluttering sound of a heartbeat, strong, insistent, alive. Damien's breath, sir, hitched audibly. Dr. Patel angled the screen. "There he is. Everything looks perfect. Growth on track, placenta good position, heartbeat steady at 148 beats per minute." Elena looked at Damien. His eyes were fixed on the screen, glistening. He reached for her hand without a word and held on tight. "That's our son," he whispered, voice cracking just a little. On the drive home, the city blurred past in streaks of gray and gold. Neither of them spoke for a long stretch. Finally, Damien broke the silence. "I want to give him things I never had." "Like what?" "Safety. Quiet mornings. A father who comes home every night." He glanced at her. "A name that doesn't carry shadows." Elena touched his arm. "He already has those things. Because he has you." Damien pulled the car over to the side of the road, put it in park, and turned to face her fully. "I almost lost you both before I even knew." His voice was low, rough. "I won't let that happen again." She leaned over the console and kissed him slow, deep, full of everything they'd held back for too long. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "But there are things I have to handle," he said quietly. "People who might see this as leverage." Elena nodded slowly. "I know. I need you to trust me when I say some doors stay closed. For now, I trust you." She traced the line of his jaw. "Just promise you'll walk through our door every night." "I promise." That night they lay in bed, her back to his chest, his hands splayed, protectively over her belly. The baby rolled lazily, a small foot pressing against Damien's palm. He chuckled softly. He's saying hello. Elena smiled into the dark. "He knows you're here." Damien kissed the back of her neck. "I'm not going anywhere." But even as he said it, his mind was already turning. Because Marcus Red had seen the ultrasound. And Marcus Red had never been good at keeping secrets. The next few days passed in a fragile bubble of normalcy. Mornings of coffee and quiet conversations. Afternoons of walks in the private rooftop garden. Evenings of Damien reading aloud from baby books he'd ordered, his deep voice stumbling over words like colic and swaddling, making Elena laugh until her sides hurt. Then the gift arrived. A courier in a plain gray uniform knocked at the penthouse door just after lunch. Damien was in his office downstairs. Elena signed for the package herself. It was a cream-colored box tied with black satin ribbon. She carried it to the living room, curious. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, lay a single silver baby rattle antique, heavy, beautifully engraved with tiny vines and stars, and a small white card. "Congratulations, Elena. A child changes everything. Even kings can fall." No signature. Her fingers went cold. When Damien walked in 20 minutes later, he found her sitting on the couch, box open on the coffee table, card in her lap. He crossed the room in 3 strides, took the card, read it once. His face didn't change. But the air around him shifted, became sharper, colder. "Who delivered it?" he asked quietly. "Courier." No company name on the slip. Damien nodded once, slow. Then he pulled out his phone. "Luca. Up here. Now." Luca Rossi arrived in under 10 minutes, broad shoulders, quiet eyes, the only man Damien trusted with his life and now, apparently, with theirs. Luca looked at the box, the rattle, the card. "Someone's sending a message," he said. Damien's voice was flat. "Someone's sending a threat." Elena stood up. "I don't want anyone hurt because of this." Damien turned to her, expression softening instantly. "No one's touching you," he said. "Or him. I swear on my life." But that night, Elena lay awake long after Damien fell asleep beside her. She stared at the ceiling, hand on her belly, feeling the steady rhythm of the baby's movements, and she wondered how long peace could last in a world built on power and payback. The days after the rattle arrived felt like walking on cracked ice, every step careful, every sound too loud. Elena tried to hold on to the small joys, the way Damien's hand always found her belly first thing in the morning, the quiet mornings when he'd rest his cheek against the curve and murmur good morning to their son, in a voice so soft it barely carried. But the card's words lingered like smoke she couldn't wave away. Even kings can fall. Damien didn't speak much about it. He just moved faster, quieter, more calls in the study with the door closed, more men in dark suits, appearing in the lobby downstairs, nodding respectfully when she passed. Luca was around almost constantly now, a calm, solid presence who checked windows, elevators, delivery logs without ever making it feel like a prison. Elena hated it, but she understood. One evening she found Damien on the terrace, phone to his ear, voice low and edged with steel. "Trace the courier company. I don't care if it's a shell. Find the handler. And when you do, bring him to me." He ended the call, turned, and saw her standing in the doorway. The hardness in his face softened instantly. "You should be resting," he said, crossing to her. "I'm fine." She slipped her arms around his waist, pressing her cheek to his chest. I don't want this hanging over us forever." He wrapped her up carefully, one hand cradling the back of her head. "It won't. I'm handling it." "How?" He hesitated just a second, but she felt it. "Some conversations need to happen face to face," he said finally. "Marcus knows too much. He saw the ultrasound. He's the weak link." Elena pulled back enough to look at him. "You're going to see him?" "Tomorrow night. Warehouse on the East Docks. Neutral ground. Luca will be there. You'll stay here with extra security." "No." Damien's brow furrowed. "Elena, I need to see it end," she said quietly. "I need to know this stops. For him." She placed his hand on her belly, where the baby gave a slow, rolling kick right on cue. "Please." He stared down at where their hands met over the swell of her stomach. For a long moment she thought he'd refuse. Then he exhaled, slow and defeated. "You stay in the car," he said. "Tinted windows, doors locked. Lucas men on every corner. You don't get out unless I say so." She nodded. "Okay." He kissed her forehead, lingering. "I hate that you have to see any of this. I hate that it exists," she whispered back. "But we're ending it together." The warehouse district smelled of salt, diesel, and old metal. The SUV rolled to a stop in the shadow of a rusted loading bay. Elena sat in the back, heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. Through the one-way glass she watched Damien step out, black coat, shoulders set, moving like a man who owned the darkness around him. Luca followed a step behind, then two more men she didn't recognize. Inside the warehouse, lights buzzed overhead, throwing long shadows across concrete. 3 figures waited near a stack of empty crates. One stepped forward. Marcus. He looked smaller than she remembered, shoulders hunched, eyes darting. Nervous sweat shone on his forehead despite the chill. Damien stopped 10 feet away. "You sent the rattle," he said. "Not a question." Marcus lifted his chin, trying for bravado. "I wanted you to know I know." Damien tilted his head slightly. "And what exactly do you think you know?" "That she came to me first, showed me the ultrasound, that she still cares what happens to me." Marcus's voice cracked on the last word. "That you're playing house, sir, with a woman who lied to you for months." Elena's stomach twisted. She pressed her palm to the window, as if she could reach through it. Damien didn't flinch. "She came to you to close a door," he said evenly. "She came to me to open a new one. That's the difference." Marcus laughed, bitter, hollow. "You really think a baby changes who you are? You're still the same man who builds empires on broken people. When she sees that, when she realizes she tied herself and that kid to a monster," Damien took one step closer. "She already knows exactly who I am," he said, voice low and lethal. "And she chose me anyway." Marcus's smile faltered. "You'll ruin them," he said, quieter now, "just like you ruin everything." Damien studied him for a long moment, almost pitying. "You have 24 hours to leave the city," he said. "New name, new life, money in an account if you disappear quietly. After that, I stop asking nicely. Marcus's face drained of color. You can't just can, Damien said simply. And I will. He turned to walk away. Marcus's voice cracked behind him. She'll never be safe with you. Damien paused at the door, back still to Marcus. She's safer with me than she ever was with you, he said. Then he stepped out into the night. In the SUV, he slid into the seat beside Elena. His hands were steady when he took hers, but she felt the faint tremor. It's over, he said. She searched his face. Is it? As over as I can make it tonight. They drove home in silence, city, sir. Lights sliding across the windows like tears. That night Damien held her close, his hand never leaving her belly. She listened to his heartbeat slow as he finally drifted off. But Elena stayed awake, because even with Marcus gone, she knew the truth. Threats don't always come from exes. Sometimes they come from inside the empire itself. The next week felt almost normal, dangerously so. Doctor visits, baby furniture deliveries, Damien coming home early, shedding his coat and tie like armor, kneeling on the floor to talk to her belly in that low, rumbling voice that made her heart squeeze. One afternoon he walked in carrying a small white bag from a boutique downtown. Open it, he said, setting it on the kitchen island. Inside were the tiniest pair of navy blue sneakers, soft leather, little white laces, impossibly small. Elena laughed through sudden tears. They're ridiculous and perfect. Damien pulled her into his arms. I want him to have normal things, he murmured against her hair. Even if the rest of his life isn't. She pressed her face to his neck. He will, because we're giving them to him. That evening they sat on the couch, her feet in his lap, his thumb tracing slow circles over her ankle. He told her stories, quiet ones about a childhood spent learning that love was a liability, that trust got people killed. I don't want that for him, Damien said, staring at the city lights beyond the windows. Elena laced her fingers through his. Then we won't give it to him, sir. For a few hours the world felt small and safe, until the phone rang. Unknown number. Damien answered on speaker, body going still. A distorted voice filled the room. Beautiful family you're building, Voss. Shame if something happened before the baby arrives. Click, the line went dead. Damien's face turned to stone. He looked at Elena. I'm ending this tonight, he said. She reached for his hand, fingers cold. Not without me knowing everything. He hesitated, then nodded once. Everything, he promised. But they both knew. Some endings cost more than anyone wants to pay. The warehouse meeting with Marcus had left a bruise on the air that wouldn't fade. Damien came home that night quieter than usual. He showered twice, once to wash off the docks, once like he was trying to scrub away the conversation itself. When he finally slid into bed beside Elena, he pulled her close without a word, his hand finding the swell of her belly like it was the only thing anchoring him. She waited until his breathing evened out before whispering, "You okay?" He didn't answer right away, then soft, "I hate that he got to say those things to me, that he thinks he still has any claim on what you feel." Elena turned in his arms so she could see his face in the dim light. He doesn't, not even a little. Damien's thumb traced slow circles over her skin. I know, but hearing it reminded me how easy it would be for someone to twist what we have. She kissed the corner of his mouth. Then don't let, sir, them. The next morning he was already up when she woke, standing at the kitchen island with 2 mugs of decaf and a small wooden box in front of him. What's that? She asked, patting over in one of his shirts. He pushed the box toward her. Open it. Inside lay a delicate silver key on a simple leather cord. Elena lifted it, confused. A key to the house, he said. Upstate. 35 acres, gated. Lake access. Security system that makes this place look like a hotel lobby. We can move there before he's born. Fresh start. No shadows. Her eyes filled. You bought us a house? I bought us time, he corrected gently. Time to be a family without looking over our shoulders every 5 minutes. She slipped the cord over her head, the key settling against her heart. When can we see it? Tomorrow, he said. If you're up for the drive, I'm up for anything with you. They spent the day packing light clothes, the ultrasound photos, the tiny blue sneakers. Damien insisted on carrying every bag himself, waving off Luca when he offered to help. Not yet, he said. This part's just us. The drive north took 3 hours. The city gave way to rolling hills, then dense trees, then a long private road lined with pines. When the house came into view, stone and timber, wide windows, wraparound porch, Alina's breath caught. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Damien parked, came around to her side, and helped her out. He kept her hand in his as they walked up the steps. Inside smelled of cedar and fresh paint, hardwood floors, a stone fireplace big enough to stand in, a nursery already painted soft gray with a crib waiting in the corner. Elena turned in a slow circle. "You did all this?" "Had help," he admitted, "but I picked everything. Wanted it to feel like home." She walked to the nursery window, looked out at the lake shimmering in the late afternoon sun. "It does." That night they sat on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket, listening to crickets and water lapping the shore. Matteo kicked steadily, like he approved. Damien rested his chin on her shoulder. "I'm stepping back," he said quietly. She turned to look at him. "From what?" "Everything. The day-to-day. The deals. Lucas ready. He's been ready for years. I'll still own it, still make the final calls when I have to, but I'm not going to be the one in the room anymore. Not every night." Elena searched his face. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He took her hand, pressed it to his chest. "I almost lost this before I knew it existed. I won't risk it again." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Thank you." He kissed them away. "Don't thank me. Just promise you'll remind me when I start slipping back into old habits." "I promise." They stayed on the porch until the stars came out, until the chill drove them inside, until they fell asleep tangled together in the big bed upstairs, the baby moving between them like a quiet promise. The peace held for weeks. Appointments, continued ultrasounds, checkups. The doctor smiled every time she saw Damien now, calling him the devoted dad. Elena's belly grew rounder, her steps slower. Damien learned how to assemble cribs, how to fold onesies the right way, how to make her laugh when her back ached. One evening he came in from the porch carrying firewood, cheeks flushed from the cold. "Snow's coming," he said, stacking logs by the fireplace. She watched him from the couch, feet propped on a pillow. "Good. I want him to see his first snow here." Damien knelt in front of her, hands on her knees. "He will." But peace in their world was never permanent. It shattered on a Tuesday morning. Elena was in the kitchen making tea when Damien's phone rang on the counter. He answered it in the next room, voice low. She didn't mean to listen, but the words carried anyway. "Confirmed. It's one of ours. Former lieutenant. He's been talking. Says he has proof Voss has a weakness now. A family." A pause. "Then make sure he never gets the chance to use it." Elena's mug slipped from her fingers and shattered on the tile. Damien was there in seconds, phone still in hand. He saw her face, the broken porcelain, the way she was staring at him. "Elena, who was that?" she asked, voice small. He set the phone down. "Luca. We have a loose end. Someone who used to work for me. He's unhappy. Thinks I owe him more than I paid." She wrapped her arms around herself. "And he knows about us?" Damien stepped closer, careful. Suspects. That's enough. What are you going to do?" He looked at her, really looked like he was memorizing every line of her face. "I'm going to finish it," he said quietly. "One last thing, then I'm done. Completely." She reached out, fingers trembling, and touched his cheek. "Come back to us." He covered her hand with his. Always. He left that afternoon. Elena sat by the window, watching the first flakes of snow drift down, hand on her belly. Matteo kicked hard, insistent. She smiled through the fear. "I know, baby," she whispered. "Daddy's coming home." The contractions started just after midnight. Elena woke with a sharp, twisting pain that stole her breath. She lay still for a moment, hoping it was nothing Braxton Hicks, false alarm, anything but this. But the next one came harder, faster, rolling through her like a wave she couldn't outrun. She reached for Damien. He was awake in an instant, had been half awake for weeks now, attuned to every shift of her breathing. "Elena?" His voice was rough with sleep and sudden fear. "It's time," she whispered, gripping his hand as another contraction built. "It's happening." Damien moved like he'd rehearsed this 1,000 times. He helped her sit up, wrapped her in his coat, carried her downstairs even though she insisted she could walk. The car was already warm. He'd programmed the heater to come on at night, just in case. Luca met them at the door with the keys. No questions, no hesitation. The drive to the private hospital took, 27 minutes. Damien held her hand the whole way, murmuring steady words she barely heard over the roar in her ears. "You're doing so good, love. Breathe with me. In, out. We're almost there." At the hospital, the staff moved like they'd been waiting. Private suite, best team on call. Damien never left her side, not for paperwork, not for updates, not even when the nurse suggested he step out for a moment. He stayed, hours blurred into pain and breathing and his voice anchoring her. "I'm right here," he kept saying. "You're strong. You've got this." The final push came at dawn. A cry split the room, fierce, indignant, alive. The doctor lifted a tiny, red, squirming boy and placed him on Elena's chest, skin to skin, heart to heart. Elena looked down at the little face, dark hair, plastered wet, stormy gray eyes blinking up at the lights, tiny fist curled against her skin. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Damien leaned over them both, his own tears falling unchecked. He reached out with shaking fingers and touched the baby's cheek, gentle, reverent, like he was afraid the moment might shatter. "Hey, little man," he whispered, voice breaking. "I'm your dad." Elena smiled through exhaustion. "He's perfect." Damien cut the cord with hands that trembled. Then he kissed Elena's forehead, her temple, her lips soft, grateful, full of everything he couldn't say. They named him Matteo Voss. The hospital kept them 3 days monitoring, resting, learning the rhythm of newborn life. Damien held Matteo for hours, walking slow circles around the room, whispering promises only the two of them could hear. When they finally brought him home to the upstate house with its wide windows and crackling fireplace, everything felt different, softer, whole. Weeks slipped by in a haze of sleepless nights and tiny miracles. Matteo's first smile, at Damien of course, his first real grip around Elena's finger, the way he quieted the moment Damien's deep voice started humming an old lullaby. Neither of them remembered learning. One Sunday morning, snow blanketed the lawn outside. Damien carried Matteo to the window, bundled in a soft blue blanket, and held him up to see the world sparkling white. "Look at that, buddy," he murmured. "Your first snow." Elena watched from the couch, wrapped in a throe, heart so full it ached. Damien turned, caught her eye, and smiled, the real one, unguarded, the one he saved only for them. He crossed the room, settled beside her with Matteo cradled between them. "I was wrong about so much," he said quietly. "I thought power was the only thing that mattered. I thought letting go meant losing everything." Eleanor rested her head on his shoulder. "And now I know the only thing that matters is right here." He kissed the top of her head, then Matteo's tiny one. "You, him, us." She laced her fingers through his. "I waited too long to tell you," she whispered. "I was scared of what knowing would change." Damien pressed his lips to her. Temple. It changed everything. For the better. They sat like that as the snow fell quiet together. The three of them wrapped in a peace hard won and fiercely guarded. No more shadows at the door. No more threats in the dark. Just a family, a home, a future they'd fought for. Months later, on a warm spring afternoon, Elena found Damien on the porch swing, Matteo asleep against his chest, tiny fist curled in his father's shirt. She leaned against the railing watching them. Damien looked up, eyes soft. "Happy?" he asked. She smiled, slow and sure. "More than I ever thought possible." He reached out his free hand. She took it, sat beside him, let him pull her close. The swing creaked gently. Matteo sighed in his sleep. And for the first time in years, Damien Voss felt like a man who had finally come home. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like, drop a comment with your favorite moment, and subscribe for more emotional journeys like this one. See you in the next story.